Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be looking at the world of international trade and more specifically, how businesses are managing risks in their supply chains.
Absolutely.
You sent over some really fascinating research on AEO certification.
Yeah.
Authorized Economic Operator.
Yeah.
For those that have come across it before.
A fascinating topic.
Yeah.
AEO might sound a little bit technical at first, but it really gets to the heart of how trust and security are playing out in global commerce these days.
Yeah, and our main source today is this research article titled From Trading Security to Firm Resilience, the Case of Risk Prevention Through Supply Chain Cross-Border Accreditation in Taiwan.
Right.
By Cheng and Chou.
Yep.
And what I thought was so interesting about this research was that it really goes beyond just theory. It really digs into the nuts and bolts of what AEO means for businesses on the ground level.
Absolutely. And it reveals some surprising insights, I think, especially for those of us who might think customs regulations are pretty dry stuff.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Can you give us just a jargon-free explanation of what AEO certification is and what its purpose is in the big picture of global trade?
Yeah. So essentially, AEO is about building a network of trusted partners in the global supply chain.
Okay.
So we're talking businesses, customs, authorities, logistics providers, everyone in between.
Okay.
And it's a voluntary program, meaning that companies can choose to participate, but it's becoming increasingly important in international trade.
Okay, so voluntary but important.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit like a you should probably do this situation.
Right.
What are the motivations for businesses to actually go through the process of getting certified?
Yeah, you're right to pick up on that.
Yeah.
While it is voluntary, AEO certification is starting to become a necessity for businesses that want to compete in certain global markets.
Okay.
And the research highlights a few key reasons why companies pursue this. One is simple customer demand. A lot of large multinational companies, especially in industries with strict regulations, now require their suppliers to be AEO certified.
So it's a bit like a stamp of approval that a business is trustworthy and reliable.
Exactly.
Makes sense in a global marketplace where you might not know every player personally.
Yeah, you don't know who you're dealing with necessarily, and AEO helps to establish that trust by requiring businesses to meet high standards for security and compliance. It's not just about saying you're trustworthy, it's about demonstrating it through concrete actions and procedures.
So what kind of actions are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Can you give us some specific examples of what businesses actually need to do to achieve this gold standard of AEO certification?
So it's a pretty comprehensive process.
Okay.
Businesses need to invest in upgrading their security infrastructure, both physical and digital.
Okay.
One company in the study had to completely revamp their warehouse security.
Wow.
They installed biometric scanners at entry points and implemented 24/7 surveillance to meet AEO standards.
Wow, that sounds like a serious commitment.
Yeah.
I could see how that would be a deterrent for some companies, especially maybe smaller ones with more limited budgets.
Sure.
But I'm guessing there are some serious payoffs as well.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, no one would bother.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
There are significant costs involved,
Yeah.
but the benefits can be substantial as well.
Okay.
One of the most tangible benefits is streamlined customs clearance.
Okay.
AEO certified businesses are considered low risk, so they often get expedited processing and fewer physical inspections.
So it's like getting in the fast pass lane at customs.
Yeah, exactly.
But how much does that actually make a difference for businesses?
Yeah, it can be a game changer, especially for industries where time is critical.
Okay.
The research includes a quote from an electronics firm manager who was ecstatic about the time savings they achieved after getting AEO certified.
Okay.
They were able to import expensive machinery almost 50% faster than before.
To 50% faster.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's massive.
I could see how that would be a massive advantage in a fast-paced industry like electronics.
For sure.
But we were talking about those stringent security measures a minute ago.
Right.
How do those play into the speed of customs clearance?
Right.
It seems counterintuitive that more security equals faster processing.
Yeah, it's about building trust and predictability.
Okay.
AEO certification demonstrates to customs authorities that a business has robust security measures in place.
Right.
From physical security to cybersecurity.
Okay.
This reduces the need for intensive inspections at the border because customs officials already have a high level of confidence in the integrity of the shipments.
So it's not just about having a fence around your warehouse.
Right.
It's about having systems in place
It's the whole package.
to guarantee that the goods haven't been tampered with or compromised in any way.
Exactly. It's about creating a secure and transparent supply chain that
Right.
benefits everyone involved. Another great example from the research is the use of non-invasive X-ray scans for inspections.
Hold on, tell me more about these X-ray scans.
Sure.
How do they work, and why are they such a big deal for businesses?
So these scans use advanced technology to create detailed images of the goods inside a container or truck,
Okay.
allowing customs officers to identify any potential security threats or discrepancies without needing to physically unload and inspect everything.
Okay.
And this is particularly beneficial for businesses dealing with sensitive goods like electronics or pharmaceuticals, where opening packages can cause damage delays or even contamination.
So it's starting to sound like AEO certification is a win-win situation.
It seems that way.
Businesses get faster, processing fewer disruptions, and customs authorities get increased security and confidence in the goods crossing borders.
For sure.
We've talked a lot about the investment involved.
Yeah.
What about the actual cost?
Right.
What are businesses looking at in terms of financial commitment?
You're right, it's not a free lunch. The research highlights that the costs associated with AEO certification can be substantial.
Okay.
Companies need to invest in upgrading their security infrastructure, implementing new procedures, and dedicating personnel to maintain compliance.
Yeah.
And it's not just a one-time cost.
Right.
There are ongoing expenses associated with maintaining AEO status, such as regular audits and training programs.
So it's not just a matter of slapping a sticker on your warehouse and calling it a day.
Right.
This is a long-term commitment that requires continuous effort and resources.
For sure.
Did the research provide any concrete figures on what this investment might look like for a company?
It did.
Okay.
One company in the study noted that the amount invested to pass and maintain AEO certification was considerable.
Okay.
We were unsure about whether we could cover this cost in 5 years.
That's a pretty significant statement.
Yeah.
It makes it clear that AEO certification is a strategic decision with both substantial benefits and costs.
Yeah.
Businesses really need to weigh those carefully.
For sure, this raises some important questions about the cost-benefit analysis for businesses, especially smaller ones with limited resources.
Right.
It also makes you wonder if there are ways to make AEO certification more accessible,
Yeah.
or if the potential benefits outweigh the costs, even for companies with tighter budgets.
That's a great point, and it leads perfectly into our next discussion, how AEO certified companies fared when their supply chains were put to the ultimate test during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
But we'll dive into that in part 2.
Oh, welcome back.
Yeah, when we left off, we were talking about the costs associated with getting AEO certified.
Right.
But I want to shift gears now and talk about how these AEO certified businesses performed when they were really put under pressure during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, those global disruptions to supply chains really threw a wrench in the works for a lot of companies.
For sure.
Did this research show that AEO certification actually made a difference in how companies navigated those unprecedented challenges?
It did. The researchers found that certified businesses tended to be much more resilient in the face of those pandemic disruptions.
Okay.
The very practices that are required for AEO certification,
Okay.
things like robust risk management plans, strong communication protocols, and diversified supply chains, turned out to be absolutely crucial for navigating the uncertainty and volatility of that period.
So it's like having a solid foundation that helps you weather the storm,
Exactly.
even when these unexpected events come up.
Yeah. One of the key findings was that AEO certified firms were generally better prepared to adapt and respond to the rapidly changing conditions during the pandemic.
Right.
They already had systems in place for risk assessment, communication, and contingency planning.
Right.
This allowed them to adjust their operations much more quickly than companies that didn't have those systems in place.
That makes a lot of sense, that having that framework for managing risk would be helpful
Yeah.
in a crisis situation.
Absolutely.
Did the research give any concrete examples of how this played out in real life?
There are some really compelling examples in the study.
Okay.
One participant said, during the COVID-19 period, air and sea flights decreased significantly due to worldwide strict quarantine measures.
Yeah.
Our AEO certified suppliers and buyers could arrange the shipping and handle the supply chain disruptions much more easily.
So not only did it help with the customs clearance under normal circumstances,
Right.
but it also proved its value in navigating these extreme disruptions caused by the pandemic.
Absolutely.
That's a strong testament to its effectiveness.
Yeah, the pandemic really highlighted the importance of building resilient supply chains.
Okay.
And AEO certification encourages companies to think proactively about potential risks and develop strategies for mitigating those risks.
Okay.
This can include things like diversifying suppliers,
Yeah.
establishing alternative transportation routes,
Ugh.
and building in redundancies to their systems.
It sounds like AEO is encouraging companies to move away from that just-in-time model
Exactly.
that became so vulnerable during the pandemic.
Right? That just-in-time model works great when everything is running smoothly,
Yeah.
but it can be extremely fragile in the face of disruptions.
Yeah.
AEO pushes businesses to think more holistically about their supply chains
Okay.
and to build in those buffers that can absorb shocks.
Okay.
It's about moving towards a more resilient model that can adapt to changing circumstances.
So we've heard about the tangible benefits like faster customs clearance.
Right.
But now we're starting to see these more intangible benefits.
Yeah.
Like this increased resilience and adaptability,
Absolutely.
which can be just as valuable, if not more so, in the long run.
Absolutely. And there's another aspect of AEO that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
And it's one that I find particularly intriguing.
What's that?
The impact on a company's reputation and brand image.
Oh, okay. I'm curious about that too.
Yeah.
How does a security certification translate into a better brand image?
Well, think about it from the perspective of a potential customer or partner.
Okay.
In today's globalized world, trust is paramount. Yeah. You're doing business with companies you may never have met face to face,
Right.
often across vast distances and cultural differences.
Absolutely. Trust is essential,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with these complex transactions and international regulations.
Exactly. And AEO certification acts as a really powerful signal of trust. It tells the world that your company meets international security standards,
Okay.
that you take risk management seriously,
Yeah.
and that you're committed to ethical and compliant business practices.
So it's not just about protecting your own business.
Right.
It's also about signaling to others that you're a reliable and trustworthy partner.
Exactly. It's about building that trust.
I can see how that would be a significant advantage in a competitive global market.
Absolutely. It can open doors to new opportunities,
Right.
strengthen existing relationships,
Yeah.
and ultimately give you a competitive edge.
Okay.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh.
There's even more to explore when it comes to the ripple effects of AEO certification.
Like what?
The research suggests that the rigorous standards required by AEO can actually lead to improvements in a company's overall operational efficiency.
Wait a minute. You're saying that having more rules and regulations can actually make a business more efficient?
I know it might seem a bit paradoxical,
It does.
but think about it this way.
Okay.
AEO certification forces companies to take a hard look at their processes,
Okay.
identify potential weaknesses, and implement improvements.
Okay.
This can lead to streamlined workflows, reduced errors, and better communication between different parts of the organization.
So it's not just about security. It's about creating a culture of continuous improvement.
Exactly.
But I'm still a bit skeptical.
Okay.
Did the research find any concrete examples of AEO actually leading to greater efficiency?
There were some interesting anecdotes from the study.
No.
One company mentioned that the process of implementing AEO standards helped them identify bottlenecks in their supply chain that they hadn't noticed before. Okay.
By addressing those bottlenecks, they were able to significantly reduce lead times and improve their overall responsiveness to customer demands.
Okay, now that's compelling.
Yeah.
It sounds like AEO can be a catalyst for positive change, pushing companies to adopt these best practices that benefit not only their security, but also their overall performance.
Exactly, and that's what makes AEO so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just a box-checking exercise.
Right.
It has the potential to transform the way businesses operate and interact on a global scale.
This is all starting to paint a very compelling picture of AEO.
Yeah.
It's not just a security measure, it's a strategic investment in a company's long-term success.
I agree.
But with all these benefits, why isn't every business rushing to get AEO certified?
That's a great question. Remember, AEO is still a voluntary program.
Right.
And there are barriers to entry, particularly for smaller businesses with limited resources. The costs we discussed earlier can be a significant hurdle.
Yeah.
And some companies may not fully grasp the potential return on that investment. We talked about the upfront costs.
Right.
And the ongoing efforts involved in getting and maintaining certification.
For sure.
So it seems like education and awareness are key.
Absolutely.
Businesses need to understand the full spectrum of AEO benefits,
Yeah,
not just those immediate gains in customs clearance.
I completely agree. There's a need for more research,
Yeah.
more case studies, and more real-world examples to demonstrate the tangible and intangible value of AEO certification.
This conversation has been so helpful for me.
I'm glad.
I had heard about AEO certification before, but I never really understood the scope of its impact.
Yeah,
It's clear that it's much more than just a security program.
yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And speaking of the bigger picture, I think it's time to shift gears and look at the broader implications of AEO.
Okay,
We focus on the business perspective,
right.
but what about the impact on the global trade landscape as a whole?
Yeah,
AEO isn't just changing how individual businesses operate. It's starting to reshape the entire landscape of international trade.
that's a crucial point, and it leads us to the final and perhaps most thought-provoking part of our deep dive,
Okay.
the future of AEO and its role in shaping international trade. We'll dive into that in part 3.
We've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive talking about AEO certification
Right.
from a business perspective.
Yeah.
But you mentioned AEO's impact on the entire landscape of international trade.
Right.
Where do you see this heading in the future?
Well, what I find so fascinating is how AEO is evolving.
Okay.
It began with this focus on security,
Yeah.
but now it's becoming a framework for trust, transparency, and resilience across global supply chains.
Right.
Imagine a network of trusted traders spanning the globe,
Yeah.
collaborating to make international commerce smoother, safer, and more efficient.
Okay.
That's the potential we're talking about here.
That's a powerful vision.
It is.
This research was focused on Taiwanese companies.
Right.
Can we apply those findings to the rest of the world?
That's a key question.
Yeah. While the specific context might differ, the fundamental principles of AEO are universal.
Okay.
It's based on standards set by the World Customs Organization.
Right.
Which means countries around the world are adopting it.
So it's not just a regional thing.
Right.
It's a global shift
It's a goal.
in how we approach international trade.
For sure.
What are some of the big questions that this raises about the future of AEO?
Well, there are several, and they're worth pondering.
Okay.
Could AEO become mandatory
Okay.
for businesses operating in certain sectors or regions?
Interesting.
It's already becoming a de facto requirement in some industries.
Yeah.
And will it expand beyond security
Okay.
to encompass other aspects of supply chain management,
Okay.
like sustainability or ethical sourcing?
Those are really interesting possibilities.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to what we've learned from this research.
Okay.
What are some of the key takeaways for our listeners?
Sure. So we started by defining AEO certification.
A voluntary program that promotes security and compliance in international trade.
Okay.
We looked at the motivations for getting certified,
Yeah.
emphasizing benefits like faster customs clearance,
Yeah.
fewer inspections, and access to new markets.
Right. And we also discussed the costs involved in getting and maintaining that AEO certification,
Absolutely.
stressing that businesses need to weigh those costs against the potential benefits.
For sure.
And we saw how AEO actually helped businesses navigate the COVID-19 pandemic,
Right.
proving its value in building resilience and adaptability.
A real world test?
Yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway is that AEO is more than just a security measure.
I agree.
It's a strategic investment that can boost a company's reputation, improve their operational efficiency,
Right.
and even contribute to a more secure, transparent, and resilient global trade network.
Exactly.
So whether you're a seasoned professional in international trade
Yeah.
or just starting out,
Right.
AEO is definitely a topic worth exploring.
I think so.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive
It has been.
into AEO certification. I know I've learned a lot,
I'm glad.
and I hope our listeners have too.
Me too.
And as always, knowledge is most powerful when it's applied.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners out there, what will you do with the insights that you've gained from this deep dive?
Yeah.
How might AEO certification impact your business or your industry?
Good question.
Keep those questions in mind as you continue exploring this topic.
For sure.
Until next time, keep learning
Yeah.
and keep those questions coming.
Absolutely.